it's a bit of a deep topic. The definition of self-worth is the internal sense of being good enough, deserving of love, and belonging of others. Now, self-worth is a pretty big deal. It's how important you think you are as a person. That's huge. And self-worth kind of has four subcategories, which is self-confidence, identity, feeling of belonging, and feeling of competence. Now, we've talked about self-confidence in the previous video, but feeling of competence is obviously how capable you think you are of doing certain tasks, how smart you are, how competent you are when it comes to your social skills. Feeling of belonging, like if you believe that you're part of a group, like a strong friendship group or family, that usually means you have a good amount of self-worth, because if people value you, then it usually means that your perception of yourself is going to be better because of that. And then identity, which is probably the biggest out of the four, which is who you think you are as a person. And well, the self-worth theory thinks that self-worth is basically defined by the constant need for humans to find self-acceptance, and self-acceptance is found through achievement. And just for a reference, on the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, self-worth is actually at the top. So you've got self-confidence and the kind of other four subcategories, kind of ranging from the top to the second highest level, but at the end of the day, self-worth is the pinnacle. Now, in this video, we're going to be talking about three things, which is, firstly, what is your self-worth determined by? What are the implications of having a high sense of self-worth or a low sense of self-worth? And the conclusion and my final thoughts of self-worth. And most importantly, in my opinion, is how self-worth has kind of been adapted and changed in the postmodern society we live in right now, because self-worth is probably one of the biggest topics in our society right now. And later on I'll explain why I think that. So, I would say that your self-worth is determined by three things: the way you were raised, your biology, and your social group. And the difference between the subcategory of confidence and self-worth is that I think your self-worth can change a lot more over time than your confidence can. Now, obviously, your confidence can change from if you're an adult and like everyone thrashes you or something, but I feel like self-worth is based on a lot more factors. The way you were raised. Self-worth is found mainly through achievement. Now, the way your parents can factor into this is if you work really hard and you get rewarded for working hard, your self-worth will go up. Let's say I've had an off week and there's nothing in that week that I am particularly proud of doing, then my self-worth goes down. I feel lazy. I don't feel like I'm worth as much, essentially. Your parents can have a huge effect on your self-worth because of the validation your parents give you and the tools they give you to reach self-actualization and to reach whatever you deem as successful. Which I would say in most cases hard work is correlated with success. This makes sense from a biological standpoint because our job as mammals essentially was to reproduce and survive. And I guess you could incorporate self-worth as the drive that we have in our heads to achieve both of these things. Survival can entail hard work, and to reproduce can entail hard work. Let's say the harder you put into your body or into your image or your work, you're more likely to procreate, as an example. Can't lie, I need to take this shit off. It's way too hot. The more you hang out with people who are successful, the more likely you are to be successful. People like that make your self-worth go higher as well, because it affects all the other categories. For example, it affected confidence. I talked about that in the last video. I affected your identity because who you associate with also affects your self-worth. So if you associate yourself with people who don't do anything productive in their lives, people who just sit around and play games all day, then your self-worth is likely going to be low. The point I was trying to make earlier with how confidence is more developed at a younger age, whereas I think self-worth can be developed at any age, is because of the other three categories apart from confidence that can affect self-worth. For example, I mentioned how the feeling of competence could affect you. Like, let's say I didn't do anything productive, I was very incompetent with how I spent my time, that could lower my self-worth within that week. Same goes with identity. If I hang out with the wrong people, then I will identify with that group of people, which could either get my self-worth higher or lower depending on who they are. And finally, the feeling of belonging. It's slightly different because it's such a complex part of self-worth that I could talk about belonging in its own separate video, and I probably will. But to mention it briefly, your feeling of belonging can get tied into your family, the way they treat you, the people you hang out with. Let's say you break up with someone. Everything is going to go lower. Your self-confidence might be slightly lower. Some people, if it's an extreme breakup, might have a loss of almost identity, and no matter what kind of person you are, your feeling of belonging will change, because if you spend so much time with someone, you feel like you essentially belong with them, obviously. So even if it wasn't anything serious, if you get detached from a friend, a family member, or partner, your feeling of belonging will change. And I feel like that's one of the reasons why self-worth can also change very frequently as well. Next topic. You can't love others without loving yourself. I believe in that quote very much because I remember when I was younger and I had a very low sense of self-worth not because of my parents, but because of kind of who I hung out with and the opportunities that I have. I didn't feel like I deserved them. And it's not like I hung out with any bad people, but that kind of environment that I was in, which is basically nerds just like playing on their Switches the whole day, which was fun, it didn't give me any chance to grow as a person, and based on the theory, my self-worth will remain stagnant. Also with the fact that I was not a very good-looking kid, and I didn't feel like I deserved anything that I had a very low sense of self-worth. And I felt alone, and I wanted to be in a relationship, but I was definitely incapable of doing that because I had a low sense of self-worth. Now, I'm not saying that if I said to myself, oh no, I need to love myself for who I am, then I'll become a pussy mobile, then I'll get lots of girls. I'm not saying that. I think that the first step that anyone needs to hop onto for someone that has a low sense of self-worth is just to realize that you're a human being with potential. Like, for example, I started working out, I started socializing more, and that caused me to have a higher and higher sense of self-worth. And if I didn't go down that path, here's the thing, I think if my parents didn't raise me right, I think I'd be depressed right now. I think I would be a huge fat guy, still playing on my lovely Switch, and I do sometimes play on it, still. But I would play on it all day, every day, not doing anything with my life, masturbate 3 times a day, and my self-worth would go lower and lower and lower until eventually. And it just goes to show that the implications of self-worth are incredibly big. Not just romantically either, in terms of your just general social life as well. There's a good amount of pride that comes with having self-worth. And I think that as long as it doesn't go overboard into just being some asshole who thinks he's the shit, people can respect the pride you have for yourself because you deserve it. And that positive feedback loop gives you a higher sense of self-worth. And maybe even like one of the most important parts is how self-worth can affect business. Your sense of self-worth can impact how you think, how you act, and also you see others. A good sense of self-worth means that you could be a leader. The 4 parts of self-worth, one being your feeling of competence, could help you become a better decision maker. Now, down to the conclusion and the way the postmodern society has affected self-worth. So before I talk about how you can get self-worth now, I want to first talk about how society has affected our perception on self-worth. So we live in an era where people are being divided into two kind of groups. You have blue pill and red pill. Yes, there's black pill. I'll mention that, but for simplicity's sake, I'll say blue pill and red pill. Red pill is basically live in yourself, be who you want to be. It doesn't matter. As long as you're happy, as long as you feel comfortable in your own skin, that's what matters. Whereas you have red pill, which is no, you have a role to play in society. You have to do this, and that. If you don't complete that, you are a failure. You know what you have to do. And obviously this entails being rich, getting girls, being confident. And then there's black pill, which is almost everything you do is not up to you, it's up to your biology. Now, the idea of self-worth in blue pill is basically you define yourself. You have your own version of self-worth. Everyone's different. As long as you're happy with where you are, that's fine. Whereas red pill is kind of your self-worth is determined by this, and that. And I think the issue with the blue pill side, first of all, is that it's almost like you get to pick your own avatars, and I'm this person, I'm this gender, I like this and that, and all of that. Which in some cases is good, but then at the same time it kind of encourages you to be happy with where you are now, with putting labels on yourselves without actually making a serious change. Whereas with the red pill side, it's good to have a predisposed idea of where you should be, but at the same time, if people are not happy with that, then they're not happy. If they don't want to drive Bugattis and do all of this stuff, then why should their self-worth be low? It doesn't seem fair. I feel like the issue nowadays is that big people want to divide everyone to such extreme levels where they just get reduced to the idea of the perfect consumer, where they just sit around, buy a bunch of shit, all because they've got no motivation anymore. And who can blame them? Nowadays you can't even buy a house. You wonder how that plays into self-worth. Think about how that plays to every single category of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Because eventually you have a cost of living going up. Everything's looking very grim. And the fact that we have blue pill and red pill dividing us even more, it does not help. So I would say the main thing to get self-worth up is to, first of all, confront why you don't think of yourself in a high regard in the first place. I feel like if you were to look objectively as well, introspectively on yourself, why do you feel the way you do? For example, if someone who had a really nice physique and has lots of friends and they're still not happy with their lives, well, they need more of a sense of perspective on the people who don't have what they have, and the people who have more than what they have, and what they did to have more than what they have. Like the theory says, you need to earn self-worth. If you are the richest man on the planet who can afford everything he wants, their self-worth will still not be high, because there's two dimensions to self-worth. One is what you have and what you provide and what you've done, and the other half is the amount of effort it took you to get there. So people saying they're lost, they don't know what to do. Well, maybe that's why people could lean more towards the red pill kind of ideology in terms of trying to improve yourself. But then if people feel like they want to go into their own field that requires a lot of work but that doesn't fit the red pill, that's where the kind of blue pill idea of you're your own individual person, you can succeed doing this and that. The main thing is that you just need a combination of the two. The issue is people are so segregated to just whatever is happening to them. Just understanding why you have little self-worth, or understanding whether you deserve the amount of self-worth that you have. Like, let's say you're really overconfident. Maybe just talking to other people, looking at yourself very introspectively can give you a real good idea on what is wrong with you and how you can improve to deserve high self-worth, because it's all about the amount of effort you put into your life. Still trying to make better videos than I usually am. Exams are over, so I'm gonna be uploading a lot more. I won't just be like sitting on that chair the whole time. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you've got any tips on how to make it better, or any opinions about self-worth that you want to talk about, please put them in the comments below. Appreciate you guys. See you in the next video. Bye.
bro.